considered the most bloodthirsty man among all the Mara, since empathy seemed to be absent in him. Such was his lethality that the men who knew they would encounter him preferred to give their all, as that was better than falling into his hands. But how far did his cruelty go? Stay until the end of the video and find out. Before starting, leave your registration with the like button and subscribe to our stories. They will surely catch you. Now, activate the bell to begin. Osorio grew up in a small house made of wood and zinc sheets, which he shared with his mother, a hard-working and self-sacrificing woman, and his 3 younger siblings. His father, a day laborer, died when Osorio was barely 4 years old, leaving the family in an even more precarious situation. The absence of a father figure and the weight of responsibility fell on Osorio's shoulders from an early age. Very early in school, Osorio was an intelligent child, but his academic performance began to decline rapidly. Constant absences due to the need to work to support his family and the distractions of street life affected his education. He was often found selling gum and cleaning windshields at traffic lights. To bring in some money for the home, the streets of San Salvador were dangerous terrain for a child. Gangs dominated the neighborhood, and the presence of the Mara Salvatrucha MS-13 was especially strong. From a very young age, Osorio witnessed gang brutality, murders, extortion, and constant clashes with the police and rival gangs. Violence was part of the daily landscape, and there was no way to escape it. At age 12, Osorio had already been co-opted by the MS-13. The gang offered a kind of family and protection that he couldn't find at his home. Dysfunctional home. The initiation process was brutal, a 13-second beating that left him battered but also made him feel accepted and part of something bigger. The gang provided him with an identity and a purpose. Although these were based on violence and crime, over time Osorio adopted the nickname El Sirra in the MS-13 underworld. Nicknames are significant, representing a new identity within the gang. El Sirra began to rise through the ranks, earning the respect of his peers. Through his loyalty and capacity for violence, the gang members were his new way of life, from collecting extortion money to participating in armed confrontations with rival gangs. Formal education was completely abandoned. Osorio became a hardened young man. His childhood was interrupted and consumed by the need to survive in a hostile environment. His mother, powerless to confront him, the situation was saddened and resigned as his son slipped further and further away from any possibility of leading a normal life. His dark reputation, Mansur Osorio El Sirra, was not built overnight. It was the result of years of brutal violence and ruthless actions that turned him into a feared figure by both his enemies and his own comrades. From his earliest days in the gang, El Sirra showed a penchant for extreme violence. Life on the streets of San Salvador demanded unrelenting toughness, and Ernesto, eager to demonstrate his loyalty and courage, spared no expense in consolidating his position. His nickname, El Sirra, derived from the word Sierra, which implies cutting a deal with violence, began to take on a sinister meaning. The first major coup that solidified his reputation occurred when he was barely 17. For years, the MS-1 was at war with the rival Barrio 18 gang, and violence between both factions had escalated. El Sirra was tasked with a crucial mission, to eliminate a key Barrio 18 leader known as El Chino. The confrontation took place in a dark alley, where El Sirra and his group ambushed El Chino and his followers. Amid the chaos and bloodshed, El Sirra displayed unusual ferocity, repeatedly stabbing El Chino until he was sure there was no trace of life left. This act of brutality sent a clear message to everyone. El Sirra had no limits when it came to protecting his gang. El Sirra's rise within the MS-13 continued with a series of acts of violence that only increased his fearsome reputation. During a raid in MS-13 controlled territory, security forces captured several members of the gang, including one of the gang's mentors. Ernesto, vengeful and determined to send a message to the authorities, El Sirra organized a brutal retaliation. Along with other gang members, he kidnapped 2 off-duty police officers. What followed was a spectacle of terror. The police officers were mercilessly tortured and murdered. Their mutilated bodies were abandoned in a public place. This act of extreme violence not only reinforced El Sirra's image as a bloodthirsty criminal, not only did he not only instigate a climate of fear and respect for him inside and outside the gang, but he also instigated a climate of fear and respect for him inside and outside the gang. El Sirra's methods were not limited to brute force. He was also known for his cunning and ability to plan complex operations. One notable episode was the execution of a traitor within the MS-13. A member of the gang had begun collaborating with the police in exchange for protection. Upon discovering the betrayal, Sirra devised a meticulous plan to lure the traitor into a trap by faking a reconciliation meeting. He managed to get the traitor to appear at an isolated location there in the presence of other members of the gang. El Sirra carried out a public execution. The traitor was subjected to a summary trial and subsequently brutally executed. This event served as a warning to any other member who might consider betraying the gang. El Sirra's brutality Sirra also extended to the civilian community. Extortion was one of the main sources of income for the MS-13, and Sirra was in charge of several extortion operations. His method was simple but effective. Fear. Those who refused to pay their rent were tied up mercilessly. On one occasion, a merchant who refused to pay was found murdered along with his family. This heartless act sowed terror among other merchants, ensuring that few would dare to defy the gang's demands. His decline into madness followed the traitor's public execution and the bloody reprisal against the police. Sirra became a symbol of terror. These acts earned him fearful respect within the gang and among his enemies, but they also sowed the seeds of his own decline. The constant need to demonstrate his brutality to maintain his position pushed him further and further toward an endless spiral of violence. By the way, if you enjoy the video, we invite you to give us a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. His aggressiveness continued to increase, and his bloodthirsty nature began to be evident in his daily operations. Each mission assigned to him was carried out with extreme cruelty. One of the most chilling episodes was the massacre in a small rural community that refused to pay extortion money. SRL led his group in a ruthless attack, murdering all the inhabitants, including women and children. This act of barbarism not only cemented his reputation as a ruthless killer, but also drastically increased his death toll. El Sirra's violence was not limited to his enemies or those who refused to comply with the gang's demands. Within MS-13 itself, any sign of disloyalty or weakness, he was severely punished. Several of his own comrades were executed under his orders for suspicion of treason or simply for not following his instructions to the letter. Paranoia took hold of him, and his response to any real or perceived challenge was immediate elimination. The absolute control he exerted over his group allowed him to carry out more ambitious and lethal operations. On one occasion, El Sirra Palano executed an attack against a police convoy transporting several captured gang members. The ambush resulted in the deaths of more than a dozen police officers and the release of his comrades. This audacious attack significantly increased his death toll and reinforced his image as an untouchable figure within the criminal world. El Sirra's psychological collapse also played a crucial role in his decline toward excessive aggression. The constant exposure to violence and death, along with the stress of maintaining his position of power, began to affect his mind. Sleepless nights, plagued by nightmares and memories of his victims, drove him to a state of emotional numbness. His only way of dealing with the trauma was through even greater violence, perpetuating a vicious cycle. The expansion of his criminal operations also contributed to the increase in his death toll. Sirra became involved in large-scale drug trafficking, which brought with it clashes with drug cartels and other gangs. These conflicts not only resulted in increased violence, but also in the systematic elimination of anyone who stood in his way. Each settling of scores and each battle for territory added more names to his death toll. Sirra's brutality did not go unnoticed by authorities, who intensified their efforts to capture him. raids and clashes with the police became more frequent and bloody incidents. In a particularly intense operation, Sirra and his group were cornered in a safe house. The ensuing shootout was a massacre with multiple casualties among both gang members and security forces. Although Sirra managed to escape, the incident left clear that his time was running out. Sirra's paranoia and aggression reached their peak when he began to see enemies everywhere, even among his closest allies. Internal purges became a constant, and any sign of weakness was punishable by death. His leadership became tyrannical, and widespread mistrust began to erode the cohesion of his group. Finally, Sirra's reign of terror came to an end in a well-planned ambush by the authorities. After years of persecution, he was captured in an operation in which many of his men were killed. The capture of Sirra was celebrated as a great triumph in the fight against gangs, but the scars of his actions remained etched in the memories of many. Thus, we reached the end of this video. If you liked it, I invite you to give us a like so we can continue making more videos like this. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. I wish you a great day until next time.